to get started in just a bit, few seconds or so. I am not of Ka'u. I'd like to ask Malia Ka'ehue to just come and join me and help to welcome. So I am not of Ka'u. My name is Mahina Paishan. I come to you from Kona. But I wanted to call out to all those who are of Ka'u. Mahalo nui for allowing us to be in your space. Also, Malia and her ohana, thank you so much for allowing us to be in your space. I asked these keiki also to help join me. And we're gonna, just to open and to honor the people of Ka'u, we're going to sing a verse of a well-known song, We Love Your Mele, a cappella. Ke'i ke akuwa, kanania o Ka'u, ne ka beauty a o vai o Palahemo, aloha no Ka'u, ke'i ke akuwa, kanania o Ka'u, ne ka beauty a o vai o Palahemo, aloha no Ka'u. Mahalo nui, mahalo nui, mahalo. Mahalo. And being that this is a Lunar New Year, time of new cycles, new beginnings, bringing in the fire horse, I also wanted to offer this mele that really symbolizes the beauty, the strength, the resilience of Ka'u people. It was composed by one of my dearest friends, Kainani Kahaunaile. I'm a member of Halau Kea'ali'i Kumakani, and this is to honor the people of Ka'u who continues to hold fast to their traditions, to their knowledge systems, to their ways to protect the aina that you love. Talks about the cycles of a'ali'i from seed all the way to mature plant, and as it returns to the earth, the cycle will regenerate and regenerate and regenerate. There's a theme here because we're going to talk a lot about regeneration as well, hopefully in your conversations. So, we are here this evening to talk about our aloha for Mauna Kea, Mauna Kea. Our evening is composed of three major sections where very shortly I'm going to invite our MKSOA authority members to share some background, some introduction. Tonight we're really here to launch in earnest our comprehensive management planning effort, which is driven and fueled by community voices. So thank you again for being here this evening. The second part of our evening is to have conversation around three topical areas, around access and use, around the application of indigenous knowledge systems to structure the entire governance and operational system of the authority to care for Mauna Kea. And then finally, the third topical area is to identify perhaps unresolved issues or challenges that deserve our attention. We are going to close the evening with a Q&A, question and answer session with our authority members here this evening. We have another authority member that's on her way, and John DeFries, Executive Director, sends his aloha, his deep apologies for not being able to be here this evening. He was on Oahu fielding different conversations and so forth at the legislature, and he sends his deep aloha to all of you. So here this evening, we are one team to support the MKSOA, Mauna Kea Stewardship And Oversight Authority, and their planning effort. Here tonight, we have folks representing SSFM International. Just aloha, where are you folks? Oh, they're out there. They're the greeting committee outside. We have Detail, of course, Malia Ka'ehue and Kahanu. EKF, I know that they send their aloha as well. And then Mahina Consulting, my team here, aloha. And we have a whole number of Hawaii-based organizations and companies that are joining forces to support MKSOA. Next, you'll see on slide, you'll see 12 kanaka that are volunteer members. They're just like you and I, they're community members, and their charge is to uphold Act 255, which you'll hear more about. So this evening, we have two members. We have Vice Chair, Dr. Noinoi Wang Wilson with us. And we have Neil Koho'ekele Hannes as well. Okay. We also have with us staff members, hardworking staff members. Aloha to Project Director William Stormont. And to Pua'ena'an, mahalo nui. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to call upon Auntie Noinoi to share some background and information. Mahalo.
Aloha, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces, so aloha. And also to our online audience, we may have a few people watching online. So that's why we're using microphones tonight, not because we can't hear each other in the room, but just to make sure if any of our ohanas watching online that they can be a part of this conversation as well. So let me first again say mahalo on behalf of all of us in the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority, MKSOA is our acronym. John Komeiji, our chair, is unable to be with us tonight. He's been on Oahu at the legislature as well. But he sends his aloha to all of you. And the rest of our team, as was introduced, Neil, is going to come up after me. He's the follow-up batter. So whatever I forget to say, he's going to remember and share with you. So before I start, I just want to know if this is the first time for anybody here in our audience for meeting with, okay, oh good, oh mahalo. So we were here last fall and talked to some of our community from Ka'u. A little different topic though at the time. We were introducing ourselves and talking about our structure. This time we're here for a different purpose. So I'm glad that you're joining us because this is really about hearing from our communities and gathering input as we develop with our consultant team the new management plan for our sacred Mauna, for this very special place that would cause you to come out of your warm hale at dinner time and come join us over here. So that means you think it's really important, and that I'm hoping you will gather a lot of information, as we will gather from you your thoughts and your feelings about the next steps for Mauna Kea and how we're going to together malama that very special aina for us, not only for Hawaii and Hawaii Island, but for throughout the Pacific, and for all of our friends and family from around the world who showed us back in 2015 and 2019 and 2020 how important they felt Mauna Kea was, right? And so we have this opportunity. It's a very unique opportunity that came out of that conflict with government, with people at the university who had been managing Mauna Kea Summit area for over 50 years, and our larger community who felt that there must be a different way of taking care of Mauna. And so the result of that was a working group in 2021. And that working group put a report together, and the working group was made up of about 14 people from across the Pai'aina, a few government officials. There were 4 of us on that, who serve right now on the authority, who are part of that working group. That's myself, Lanakila Manguel, Rich Matsuda, who represents the represents the observatories, and Bonnie Irwin, who is the chancellor at UH Hilo. So 4 of us were on that working group, and out of that working group came a report that went to the legislature, and Act 255, which we refer to all the time, so you'll hear that, is our enabling legislation that came out of that effort. It didn't contain 100% of the recommendations of the working group, but I would say a good 70+% of our recommendations were incorporated, and a few other extra pieces they threw in as well, which allowed for this authority to be developed. And 8 of the 12 members of the authority represent our Kanaka, first of all. We're of Hawaiian descent from this place, and 7 of us actually are community members. So the others represent the various departments that need to be a part of this. So this is the first time that an entity like this has been formed, with so many community voices, and more so, the community representatives sit in seats that dictate the kind of expertise they have to be able to participate in this. This is something very new. We have a lineal descendant, and Pomai, is that on the screen? Thank you. Pomai is Bertelman from Waimea, is a lineal descendant of Mauna Kea. Her family has lived there for generations, and that is their family member. The Mauna is their family member. Lanakila Manguel is a cultural practitioner. He represents that perspective on our authority. Okay, let me look. Paul Horner is appointed by the Senate. That's one of the seats. I'm appointed by the House. That's another seat. Dr. Kalehua Krug is an educator, so he sits in the seat reserved for educators. And Neil Hannes, his expertise is in land and Aina management, and so the person who sits in his seat has to have that experience and background. In fact, specifically on Hawaii Island, is that right? And then, am I missing somebody? John Komeiji, who is our chair, is actually coming to us with business and finance background. And then Rich Masuda represents the astronomy facilities up there, all of the Mauna Kea observatories. And then, you know, we have Mayor Alameda, so whoever is sitting in their seat as mayor sits on this authority. We have Ryan Kanakaole, who is the interim, he's from Kau, by the way, yeah, right? You guys cousin or uncle, nephew, yeah. He represents DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources. And Bonnie Irwin still remains on the authority in a non-voting seat. That's why we have 12, but we have 11 voting members. Bencudo represents the UH Regents. So the University of Hawaii Regents have a seat, and they nominated Bencudo, who was a former regent but has all the history of Mauna Kea under his time served there. I think that's it. Yeah. So that's who we are. And as was mentioned, we are a group of, we're volunteers, but this is like a full-time job. I think when, they forgot to tell us that when we applied, yeah. But it's okay because we're here for a reason, yeah. And we're here just like you're here during your dinner hour. We are here because we think this is really important for us to establish the foundation for how this Mauna is going to be taken care of with all of the interests that we all have as community up there. With science, with astronomy, with education, with conservation, with environmental protection, with our ability to visit or not visit the Mauna, with our cultural practitioners, our residents who go up there on occasion for various reasons, and our families who have family practices that are related to the Mauna. So all of that has to be brought together to the table. So, okay, I'm kind of going over my time, I think. I'm gonna stop there. There are a couple of things that you will see come up, including a presentation by Auntie Pua, because one of the things that's in the working group report and portions of it in the actual law is the foundational principles that we have to support, that we have to incorporate into everything we do. So behind me are those 3 Hawaiian values. Are they up? Yeah. Mauna Aloha, Opu Kupuna, and Holomua Oi Kela Kela, right? Our love for the Mauna, we do it in the way that our kupuna fed us and nurtured us, and we do it with creativity and understanding of change, which is inevitable. So those are some of our values that we incorporate into everything we do. And then there's kanawai, or the natural laws according to our Hawaiian mana'o, our Hawaiian landscape, and you'll learn a little bit more about that. So I'm going to turn it over right now to my colleague over here, my brother from high school time, Neil Hannes, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about our strategic framework. Mahalo.
Aloha ahiahi. Noinoi gives credit to the legislature for creating this body, for recognizing that there was a problem. But she needs to be given credit herself, because she was one of the kupuna who got arrested, who put themselves on the line and drew. The legislature could have acted because there were contested case hearings out the yin-yang, because there were litigation, all kinds of effort being spent to get something that the community was divided on. They didn't act until people like her got arrested. Then they knew something's wrong here. So, and that led to the creation. You got a problem? Let's do something different. Let's create a new state agency. Let's make it look more representative of all the issues and key stakeholders. Let's go back a couple slides. There's a line in one of those slides that's really important, Look, read the first one, back. Therefore, the health and integrity of Mauna Kea is paramount. That's not the way this was managed before. The interest of the university to have a really world-class science reserve with observatories, that was kind of paramount. Then you kind of figured out what the impacts were, and you try to mitigate as best you can. This is a different ballgame. So we're part of this new ballgame, new way of thinking about the Mauna, new way of thinking about how we regulate behavior on the Mauna, so that we observe and we honor that principle that's put forward in the statute. So we're different, but in looks, how we're going to act different. Well, one of the things we're going to do is we've committed ourselves to is a high level of community engagement. Sometimes it's just easier to go in a room by yourself and write something, but nobody else owns it. Nobody else understands the issue but you, the guy who wrote it, and so forth. And so our effort here is to go out educate and make people aware of the issues and really elicit a lot of input as to how they feel about it and how we can then take that sentiment and that input to craft policies and rules and goals so that it aligns with our community. And we don't have that division that was causing people like her to get arrested, and that we are a little bit more united in what we expect and to achieve that goal of the Mauna being paramount. And so we said, okay, we're going to engage the community, and we're going to have our plan is going to have two parts. And this is where you, as a community, are going to come in. You're going to on both parts tonight. Part of it is like the visioning part, what we call the strategic framework on that side. It's the high-level goals of where do we want to go? What are the things we do? Before we start acting and regulating, and in voyaging, we would say making our sail plan and just setting sail, loosening ourselves from the dock and setting sail. Let's be real clear about where we want to go. So your part tonight in helping us understand that is we have a mandate in the legislation to draft what they call an aspirational statement. And we actually had good discussion, I think just Waimea last week about why is it aspiration, not mission and so forth. I'm not sure. It is something we aspire to. And what I would challenge is make sure that whatever that statement is, that you see a line that goes back to controlling behavior so that we're going to achieve that statement. That would make it accountable, right? That means you're not just saying it, you have a way to do it and be it and get there. So we're going to give you some time in a breakout to talk about what that aspirational statement should be. And here's what they said it should do. Include an aspirational statement to acknowledge and contextualize unresolved social justice issues that underpin conservation, preservation, and public use of Mauna Kea. So we know that whenever an issue comes up in Hawaii, we got lots of baggage to throw on the table, right? Going back to overthrow, going back to colonization, going back to broken trusts, going back to, all kinds of things. They inevitably get in the way. I will tell you, we're not authorized, given the powers to solve all those issues, but they told us make note of them. And as part of the aspiration, we have to show that, you know why people fighting that certain act? Because this is still unresolved. And we may not be able to resolve it, but our job is to record it. And then those that we can resolve, we try to resolve. But those we cannot, like we're not the new Hawaiian sovereign nation. Okay, they didn't give us the powers to reinstate that, but we can record that is still an issue for many people. So on the strategic side, we're going to ask you about aspirational statements. What are those social justice issues that are unresolved? What are the things that you think are important? Then on the management side, we're going to talk about one of the hotbed issues is access. What about, how do we control access? What are the problems that occur with access? Maybe you are people who have accessed the mountain in the past. Why did you do it? What need did it fulfill for you? And what dangers might it have presented? Or when people go up, what have you seen, that really we should consider in how we think about regulating access and the rules that we put into place so people are safe. So people get to do what they have a right to do or need to do, and yet the Mauna is held paramount, and people have a chance to continue their practices, and most importantly, continue that pilina, that relationship with the Mauna that is so important, because that is part of who we are, especially Moku o Keawe, it defines you. And then the other part of how we're going to be different, how we're going to act differently. We're a different kind of an agency, how we're going to act differently. As Noi says, we've embedded ourselves in Hawaiian values and use that as our foundation, and really kind of looking back to the considerable wisdom and literature that we have so that we don't start with a blank slate. And so we have the kumulipo. We have kanawai that have been identified by those who study the kumulipo that are important. And so we're going to really use that to kind of a video of Antipua talking about kanawai as our springboard and source of inspiration for you to get our minds going when we start to ask the questions that we have, so that we can utilize her wisdom to kind of exercise our duty tonight to kind of bring about, inform the indigenous knowledge, create the indigenous knowledge framework that's going to be written into our strategic framework and into our regulatory framework. So without further ado, we're going to go to Auntie Pua.
Hello, Yakapoa Pau. You know, it's a real honor to talk about Kanawai because it's not something we hear about all the time, but it's something that existed for a long time, and it's something that continues to exist because it has to do with this land that we live on, and what we as Hawaiians anyway, should know about this land that we live on. That's what the Kanawais are all about. Kanawai is, first and foremost, is called a law, but it's like a code or a decree or a regulation. Any one of those will identify the idea of Kanawai. And the first Kanawai that we're going to talk about is a Kanawai called Ho'okiki Kanawai. Ho'okiki Kanawai. Okay, and Ho'okiki Kanawai is the law of continuum. And so this is about Kanakas, trying to educate Kanakas about what's happening on their land and how they can make their land exist for many generations. So this Kanawai has to do with the law of continuum. And Ho'okiki Kanawai is, the idea of Ho'okiki is to let things flow. And if you look around you, what are the things that flows? And one of the things that flow on our land is water. And they focus on water a lot because water is one of our main sources of life, for life. And so the idea of Ho'okiki Kanawai is the idea of allowing or being aware of where water flows. And the other thing that flows is magma. And the great thing about magma and lava is once it comes up, whoosh, 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 and then it flows, it comes up out of the ground, and then it flows down to the ocean. What it does, it gives us land. And we look at it sometimes as being destructive. It is not destructive. It does what it has to do in order for us to have land. And so, what the Ho'okiki Kanawai is stay out of its way. Okay, allow it to flow. And then the idea of water that flows, you know, Mauna Kea, the aupua of Ka'ohe runs from Hamakua, and it's a small aupua, runs from Hamakua to the top of Mauna Kea and over to Mauna Loa. Ka'ohe is bamboo. And the idea of the bamboo and why it's called bamboo, it has to do with water. And between the two mountains catches the most water. And it catches the most water, and this water will go into the earth, go into a bamboo idea of water basins between the two mountains. And that's why we have really big rivers in the Hamakua district, because of all the water that flows down freely. So the consciousness of what flows, where it flows, why we should be conscious of it flows, because it gives us life and because it gives us a place to live. And water is what we need for life. And a lot of the water has to do with the two mountains that we live on. Yeah. That's the idea of the continuum. The other Kanawai is Kua'a Kanawai. Kua'a is the burning back, the law of the burning back. Now, the law of the burning back has to do with the gestating of landscape, basically, gestating of landscape. You know, they initially looked at it as, or compared it to an ali'i of very, very high rank. You don't approach the ali'i of very high rank because he is out of reach of everybody. It's the same thing with these land areas, the landscape, that we need to hold sacred, or we need to hold like they're going to do a lot of good for us, because these are the land areas that are necessary for our existence. One is, of course, the volcano, and is one of it. The other is places that have marshes and streams and rivers and coral heads and the idea of the wet forest, because all of these things help to reproduce what's in there on the land. Coral head lets things out into the ocean, and a lot of fish go for it. Okay. And the wet forest is what gives life to more forests. Okay. And the streams do the same thing. And so this is the idea of the law of the burning back. So you look for these places and you be sure that you allow these places to maintain itself as it is. The other kanawai is Kaiokia Kanawai. Kaiokia Kanawai is the law of natural boundaries. Now, this is a law that we as Kanakas need to be aware of. Okay. The law of natural bodies is the law where all of these things that I just talked about, the volcano, the movement of water, and all of that, where they are moving. And what it's saying is that you have to recognize the boundary. So what this is saying, know the boundaries. Know your boundary as a Kanaka and know the boundaries of the land. So Kanawai is all about the environment, all about the land and what the land is doing and where the land is and how the land provides for us. And therefore, our idea of being conscious of it and staying away from places that is not good for us. Okay, the last kanawai is ki hoi hoi kanawai. And ki hoi hoi kanawai is the law of regeneration. And so the law of regeneration is that it's like the first law is the law of continuum. We need to continue our own generation of Kanakas. And we need to see that the generation of the native trees continue. We need to see that the generation of the native birds continue, or the generations of the insects that live in these areas continue, because they're the food for the birds. And so we have to be conscious of all of that as natives of the island. And again, these are the 4 laws of the land. And the law of regeneration is that we go out and there is a sense of reciprocation. And the sense of reciprocation is, if you go back to the Kumulipo in the first 2 lines, I was going to say this with the first kanawai, but I didn't. But with this particular line, the first 2 lines of the Kumulipo, o ke au I kahuli vela ka honua. And when you talk about that, people say, oh, that's when our earth is hot. No, it's talking about the lava. When the lava is hot, it makes our earth hot. O ke au I kahuli lole kalani. What that does when our earth gets hot like that, and a lot of steam is coming up, it clouds the sky. Okay, it hides the sun. So what it's doing is it's returning water to the space above and turning it into clouds. And eventually, what that does is that cloud system will return the water back to us. So there's the whole idea of ki hoi hoi kanawai is the idea of reciprocation, that we give and the land gives back. And so be conscious of the fact that the land does give back.
Okay, I've asked Bill Stormont just to elaborate on the boundary area of the project site area that we're talking about.
Aloha. In the early meetings we were holding, it was unclear what lands we were talking about when we talked about the Mauna Kea land. So I'm just going to take a moment to define that and some history. This is the summit of the mountain. And all of this land prior to 1968 was in the Mauna Kea Forest Reserve, quite a ways around, 60, 70,000 acres designated in the early 1900s. That was all the Mauna Kea Forest Reserve. In 1968, the state leased to the university what was called the Science Reserve, the Mauna Kea Science Reserve, and that was this circle and those 3 mouse ears, and it was a complete circle in 1968. So this is everything on the summit of the mountain. This line is roughly 12,000 feet in elevation, if you know, it's the upper part of the mountain. A little later on, it also leased the 19 acres here at Halepohaku, and that's at the 9,000 foot elevation. If you drive up the road, you get to the visitor information station, and the facilities there are at 9,000 feet, to give you some idea. Tree line is about at that elevation, right? In the 1980s, the state designated this piece of land as a natural area reserve, and it was one of many across the state where they designated lands that were representative samples of unique ecosystems in the islands, and there are a number of them on Hawaii Island and throughout the state. So that's why this piece of pie was removed from the Science Reserve. And then this piece of land here at Pu'upohaku was also included in the Natural Area Reserve. So this is DLNR managed, everything around it. We did this last week too, Paul. And so the land surrounding the Science Reserve remains Forest Reserve, managed by DLNR for public use, and the Natural Area Reserve is as well. The third piece that's important to know is the roadway that leads up to the summit from Halepohaku is the university has a non-exclusive easement for the roadway. So there is the Science Reserve, the Halepohaku lands, and the roadway are the lands that will come under the management of the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority come July 1, 2028, and that's what the university now manages. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And maybe it isn't, but I hope so. All right, Mahina, thank you.
Okay, so if you didn't grab bento, please, because you guys are gonna have to take bentos home to share with the family of plenty. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Everyone, thank you for registering. You should have a blue or a green dot on your name tag. If you don't, see one of these folks here, see Kahanu, here. Okay, blue or green. Now, if you're blue dot, you're gonna stay here. If you have a green dot on your name tag, you're gonna go on that side. Please bring your chairs with you, okay? And we're gonna go through the same questions, just in 2 smaller groups. Also, if you don't have handouts, please take a moment while we reconfigure. Grab some handouts, education, and let's, Kahanu, maybe you can help with this. Yep, green group, bring your chairs over there. For those that need an education handout. Okay, blue, how come I don't have some? We need more people. What are blues? Dusty, okay, can you adjust? Okay. Can I split you guys, please? Oh, blues is not. Okay. Agak, paano ba ako? Kalila. Can you grab me the Kalila card? The Kalila bird card. Oh, Manaki, I got it. Okay. Yeah, right there. Is yeah. Okay, aloha. Aloha again. If you don't have one of these cards, if you need one, you need one, brother. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm asking you to do, instead of us going around in a circle, maybe, do you folks know each other? Have you met each other before? Okay, good. Do you folks know each other? Okay, now you do. Okay, my ka, do. You know all of them. What about the sister that was over here? Okay, that would be good. So Noeha, maybe so you can. Yeah. So all I want you folks to do is turn and talk to, just say your name, your inoa, the aina for that supports you, and your ohana, where you live, or the aina that nourishes you. And then you're just going to respond to this question. What is your vision for Mauna Kea? What is your vision for Mauna Kea? So we're not going to do this in a big circle. You're just going to talk with each other, and then the two sisters over here. Okay? Yeah? Okay. So take 4 minutes to do that. 2 minutes each person. Okay? And those who are online, again, the question is your name and the aina that you come from, as well as what is your vision for Mauna Kea? What is your vision for Mauna Kea? So we would love for you folks to also respond online with your responses as well. What is your vision for Mauna Kea? Mahalo nui. Okay, we're gonna come back in about 30 seconds. 30 seconds. So make sure that each person is able to talk. Okay. Did you guys both get to talk? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. Mahalo. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna ask that you folks. The reason why I'm talking to them, you can't hear it in the house, is because this is for our members that are joining us online. So if anyone doesn't feel, so what's necessary is that anytime you have a response, I'm going to hand the mic to you so that they can hear what's going on, and that's how they're participating as well. So the first question is, what questions do you want to tackle first? There's 3 question topical areas. Yeah, there's access and use. There's one around addressing unresolved issues for an aspirational statement. And then the third is around the application of indigenous knowledge into the governance framework, in the indigenous knowledge framework. Okay? Anything you want to tackle first? Access and use? Or do you want to go over indigenous place informed frameworks via the Kanawai? Or do you want to talk through unresolved issues? Is there something that you would like to tackle first? Access and use. It's either which one you want to do first. Access and use, aspirational statement. Okay. So, as a precursor. So I want to make sure that everything that we're discussing is in the Act 255. So Act 255 states that the authority may require an application for all recreational uses. So right now we're just talking about recreational uses. There's a whole number of other uses. If you to look at your education handout, right there, this one, it lists the kinds of uses, yeah? There's commercial uses, there's astronomical uses, there's recreational uses, right? There's cultural uses, as an example. So for this, we're talking about recreational. Okay, so Act 255 states that the authority may require an application for all recreational uses, including fees, and create guidelines on potential limits by monitoring the social, safety, and conservation impacts of recreational use over time. Okay, so what are some examples of social, safety, and conservation impacts of recreational use that should be monitored? I'll just give you kind of a highlight of some of the other conversations. This is the ninth workshop of 10. So we've been on Oahu, Maui, Molokai, and Kauai so far. And we are being visiting Mokuan on our island. Okay? So some of the folks that is doing. Take a look at what Halekala National Park is doing as a possibility. Take a look at Volcano National Park and how they are monitoring recreational use as an example of some of the conversations that have already come up. So one important thing, there's about there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals here. So we just want to make sure that when you do take the mic, that know that there's someone probably next to you that also wants to share. So we want to share oxygen, and we want to be able to pass the mic. So who wants to go first? Yeah.
Monitor commercial use up there. I'm sure, I don't know the numbers, but I'm sure there's a lot of these tour vans and stuff that go up there. I'm not sure I'm sure there's a lot of them that go up there. Maybe just, I don't know how we would monitor them or how we'd control that. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe so much a day or something. I'm not, like I don't know the numbers, how many go up there every day, but I'm sure it's probably quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, yeah, number of vehicles. Yeah, maybe. I was sharing with Sean, and I'm kind of selfish in my. I would rather we didn't have anything up there on Mauna Kea. You know what I mean? If there was nothing up there, we wouldn't be having this meeting right now. But I don't understand, I was explaining that, I heard from one cultural practitioner that he's never been up to the top of the mountain because he doesn't belong there. It's just for the gods. So I just was, but I know, and my partner here, he works at Canada France Observatory. And so I told him, I just don't understand a lot of the work that goes on. I'm sure it's very important. I just don't understand a lot of what they do.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Gary. As a follow-up to you, what would be helpful to you that would help increase your understanding of the type of astronomical
I
activities
would
that
have
take
to
place?
go to a field trip.
What field trip? Okay.
He's invited. Yeah.
But you're seeking understanding. Is that something? Seeking understanding, more information.
I don't think it's going to go away. You know what I mean? So maybe if we understand it more, then we'd be able to accept it.
Okay, Mahat.
I just wanted to say tagging on with what Gary said. It's like, I mean, in my now, I want that too. There should be nothing up there. When I'm from Waimea, born and raised in Honokaa, and I remember my grandmother, when we were younger, saying that there was no reason to go up to the top of Mauna Kea. It's like freezing cold, you're gonna die up there. There was no that she remembers, people going up to do cultural practicing or anything like that. The only people that went up Mauna Kea was the ranchers, because they had the cows to bring down. That's what my uncle said. So, yeah, that's what I would want to. Very limited access, and if it is access, that it's culturally bound somehow.
Culturally bound.
Yeah.
Okay, that's specific. Thank you. Do you have any other advice in terms of how you would want to limit access to the summit of Mauna Kea? Anything else you want to say?
Well, when you asked how do you do that? How do you keep numbers? Well, I know that some of the ranger boys that were up there and renegading the mountain, who were the first guys up there on the mountain, who kind of brought attention to the whole thing, and Mauna Kea, Menlinguis, what's his first name again? Yeah, he was one of several boys who ran up that mountain to get them to stop on that day. Nobody knew really what was going on, but then they stayed there for months. I remember because we brought food up to them almost weekly. Because my stepson was out there, Lakea guys were out there. And what they were doing important work for they were actually taking numbers, logging in on paper. The road access is Hawaiian Home, that's through Hawaiian Home's land. I don't know, because now they're the road is part of the gig, the deal, with the whatever because where the hakaka is, that's where all the trouble was. That's where the point of contact was. That was where we're going to stop this, because you got to come to our land to do that. And that's what happened. That's where it happened. That's where they had to come to that land, and there's only one cow gate to go through. And that's a strategic plenty boys that are willing to go up there for whatever kind, to stop any kind of access to that. So getting back to my story, what they did was every day, somebody who was ever up there, every day had somebody monitoring. They had a place, a hale up there. They would chuck off, stop everybody. What are you doing up on our mountain? Where are you going? What is your affiliation with the mountain? What tour group are you with? That needs to be done. That needs to be regulated. Okay. I agree with that. Now, is that too hard ass, okole, whatever? Yeah, maybe for some people. Yeah, that is. But if you want to regulate to see really what's going on our mountain, and you want to stop the other stuff you don't want going on our mountain, certain hikes, motorcycle riding, four-wheel driving, illegal hunting, there's plenty of stuff that go up on the mountain that we don't know. So that's just my
Mahalo. Let's make sure that record. Let's make sure that we record that that the authority should take a look at the method and approach for which the Mauna Kea Rangers are collecting data, enforcing and monitoring activity. Who else? Anyone else?
I think that that presentation that Auntie Pua gave kind of should have been enough information to set the standards for how to manage the mountain. She talked about the ki hoi hoi kanawai, kaioki a kanawai, kua'a kanawai. Those are all things that tell you that this place is very sacred, like she had mentioned. And now when we look at the Mauna, that is the wawa kua. And traditionally, the Kanaka had no place in the wawa kua. And so I too feel the same as Uncle Gary, and that the mountain, and years ago, when I first talked about this with Auntie Pua in the 90s, the vision we saw back at that time was to leave the mountain alone. And because of the modern influx of things that causes the health of the mountain to decline, perhaps have some kind of indigenous folks up there doing the restoration to bring the mountain back to life. So as we know, on the slopes there's thousands of goats. I get it, people saying it's a food source, but they're not originally like kanako iwi. And so they need to be removed because they're detrimental to the native endemic plants that live there and thrive and have evolved in that ecosystem for thousands of years. And when we talk about that place being the po'ovai for our whole our island, then more so we need the things that allows that place to thrive and take away the things that causes health to decline. So that is my take. Everything off of the mountain, let restoration happen. It needs to be through the stewardship of Kanaka Maoli o Hawaii, with that set of kanawais to implement what that stewardship should look like.
Can I ask? This is your field as well. Do we know of a baseline of health and well-being for Mauna Kea, or how do you ever as to how we might start to conceptualize sign of we want to measure whether health is declining or improving? Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I think you need to reword the question so that I can understand how to answer a little better. That's kind of broad.
So if the authority were to select a particular area, and I know that we don't do that as Hawaii, we don't separate aina. However, if the authority wanted to measure the starting point of health so that they can understand whether their policies are having a positive effect, do you have any recommendations or thoughts as to how the authority might establish a baseline of health?
Maybe checking the production and the quality of our vai. I think that would be a good start. And then look at the things that it's supposed to bring the vai. Look at the condition and the data of that. Be it the plants, certain forest people that might bring the clouds. Um, I think that's a good start. There's so much, but I think that's a start.
Mahalo nui. Anyone who has not yet spoken to this first question? Please.
Aloha, I'm Nicole. So I wrote some things down that I thought regulations for commercial tourism, put caps on cars and people. I too think that Mauna Kea is sacred and only specific people should be there. However, people should be able to experience that as a core cultural value of Kanaka and Kama'aina. I also thought maybe establishing a website for cultural and education services for incoming tourists and outer island people, so that they, and maybe even making it mandatory maybe to attend some kind of, little session online that gives you the lowdown of everything. I also believe that setting up stronger regulations for pleasure and public access for visitors is important. For people who don't know anything about Hawaii or the Big Island, like, people are shocked that it snows here, and I was up on the Mauna in 2019. We spent the night, and it's very, very cold. People could get hypothermia. The lava is treacherous. The lava fields are treacherous. You can easily fall through. There's wild animals running around. There's military exercises going on. There's a lot of stuff happening there that people are just not aware of. And I think education is, a big goal to be able, to help out. And that's all I have for now.
Before my thought runs away, maybe we could manage the mountain just like how you put a special use request for entering into Kaho'olawe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. Oh, and would that be for just some users or all users? Kuaina as well?
It would depend on what their application is signing up for. So, like, are you going for, like, usually you'd go for a restoration of some sort or some kind of cultural education and connection. At Kaho'olawe, they accept everybody's hands to Malama Aina. And so if you're going up for that kind of function, I think I would be in support of that kind of access.
Mahalo. Any other mana'o before? We actually went to the next question already. So mahalo for kicking us off. How might the authority provide guidance to ensure that individuals have the information to conduct themselves in an appropriate and pono way on Mauna Kea? More simply said, how do we help all community members, whether they're of Hawaii Island, Hawaii Pai'aina, or Malihini, how do we help them conduct themselves in a pono way? What information is needed? What is needed? So we've heard already special use permit, a designated website for more information, cultural orientation, you folks said already, right?
Well, that's a great question. Like, how do you get the word out to everybody, locals, Malihini, visitors, whatever? Well, why not contact the airlines? And you just put out a pamphlet that or put it on that checkoff thing that you're gonna do. They give you before you land on the plane. You gotta say why you're there, and you check off that form of all your stuff. Maybe there can be an informational thing on there about cultural appropriate conduct in certain areas. I don't know, something like that. But that way you get everybody,
Right.
and you include them on the cost.
Mahalo. Yes.
Because they're helping, but we'll make a third on you. I don't know, something, not spending all the money doing that.
And I have a second.
That should be their kuleana.
Yes.
If you're gonna bring them in, then teach them.
So how do we share this kind of information with our own, Hawaii Island residents to ourselves in a way that is not offensive? Any thoughts? Well, if some thoughts are we should make sure that this information is available to all, even our local residents. But how do we make it in a way where it's not offensive? Thoughts on that?
I think, like Nohea was saying, a special use request would be the best way to control anybody going out there. Because, I'm not sure, because right now it'd be like, just anybody goes up there and they can do whatever they want. And I don't know who's controlling what people do up there now. Is it national park or I'm not sure. I'm not sure who controls activities up there, or everybody just free roam and do whatever they want. So I think, yeah, I mean, not to get off subject, but now they're talking about putting 7 more observatories or buildings on Haleakala. They just were talking about that. And because I was born in Maui, so it kind of hits home in that way too. But I've been here for 50 years, so Mauna Kea means a lot to me too. But yeah, I think that special use request, I think that's a good one.
Any other thoughts for this question? And wana aloha sa MKSOA member Pomai Bertelman. Aloha. Any other thoughts to this question?
I think pretty effective for Ka'u is we created this program. It was called Ka'u Ho'apili Aina. And you never have to be Kanaka to sign up. But we got this grant through, I cannot remember who the grant was through, to actually pay people in Ka'u to go into Ka'u and learn about the places, learn the mo'olelo, go to the beaches, learn everything our kupuna had to teach. And the return was hoping that these are like 12 extra people we can depend on to go and start implementing the same idea for those who aren't educated. So building the capacity within our own community. And then, Keaukaha did that too. Yes, they did. Yeah. And so I think that was effective. And it's sad because, Hawaiians might not sign up because they feel offended because they already know. But sometimes they come and they never know. They never know what Honuapo meant. And so, they luck out sometimes, but nobody gained, and they're out there advocating for ensuring that these mo'olelos are carried on. So I think we should have started from our own ohana, teaching our own keiki in our own houses about ka'u and community. We are implementing this knowledge in the school systems for whatever schools sign up, but we really trying to instill that in ka'u. And so if we can, everybody work in their own homes and then in their communities, in the school, I think as a whole, we can all collaborate and have that kind of understanding.
Do you recommend that the authority allocate resources to implement something like this?
Yeah, they can start with supporting our Hawaiian immersion school because language is kind of like the option into the future.
Record it. Yes, please, Nicole.
What about like learning centers? Like pop-up learning centers to educate people, in specific areas and stuff. But I'm also aware that on Mauna Kea, like there's hunting and you need to register to hunt, and then there's the visitor center and stuff. Maybe if we had more of those things along the line, on the Mauna, to be able to give people more education, because I have never been to the top of Mauna Kea. First of all, it's not my place to be. Second of all, I have asthma, so I never really wanted to take that chance, but there's a lot of people that can't go all the way up, and they're missing a lot of that information that's there. Not that I put any stock into it. However, there are people that, like that kind of information.
Mahalo. So you brought up facility. Yeah. Hale Pohaku, are you talking about? The information center? Yeah. Any thoughts of how Hale Pohaku or, an existing facilities, I think that's the only existing facility, can be utilized towards providing more information, education for special use access? Thoughts? You want to say more?
Hale Pohaku is already becomes like a limited access, and that the Mauna Kea State Cabins actually becomes more of that space where the Learning Center has the capacity to occur. At that space, people can stabilize. The footprint is already there. And if you cannot go beyond that space, then there's activities there that you have the capacity to do. And not activities in the way of play, but activities in the way of mo'olelo, activities in the way of hana, hoi ka mole, hoi ka aina. But there's our infrastructure already in place that we have the capacity to utilize, and that could be advantageous to achieving the opportunity for limited movement on the mountain.
No, I just wanted to share that for the astronomy staff, when you come work here in Hawaii, in the observatories, in the Mauna Kea observatories, you have to take an orientation, which is maybe half an hour long, and there are several aspects related to Mauna Kea on the orientation, cultural aspects, ecological aspects, safety, etc. So all the astronomy staff is asked to follow this orientation, and that also applies to the contractors. Okay, and to me, so there is already some system in place. Of course, not for anybody who wants to go to the summit, just as a tourist, or but to me, unless there is a permit or there is a sign-up process allowing you to go to the summit, I don't think that having a learning center, all the people will go to the learning center, okay? Some sort of control has to be exercised if you really want to have the people really properly educated.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next set of questions. I'm going to pass the mic to Malia.
Mahalo. Can we move it to the next question? So a question for you really is around the Kanawai, and you guys can listen to Antipoa talk about the Kanawai earlier. It's already been brought up as something that we should be thinking about in the implementation of the plan. So the question for you is really about are there any examples that you've seen maybe in your community, like what was brought up, or in other communities that you've heard of, that are good examples that take into account the natural laws, the laws of the universe, like the Kanawai? And just so you know, the Kanawai were written into Act 255 as part of the Kuleana of MPSOA. So in writing the comprehensive management plan, we'll be looking specifically at what are the Kanawai. So any examples, experience?
That's specific, well, maybe not just specific for Ka'u, but should be common sense. There's this, where there are burials, people shouldn't be able to have access to cause desecration. So like We see places being desecrated at Kalai where our burials are. There's burials up at Mauna Kea. My ohana is buried up there. Lilinoi is in my family mo'okuauhau, and she's buried there. And so when you have burials, especially in those types of areas, that tells you that, certain recreational events shouldn't be happening, like being able to go on your surfboard and ride down that pu'u.
So that was a great one, and that's one that's not necessarily policy, but it's social norm here. So any others?
We were talking about this earlier. I know that there are 2 trade markets on the Big Island, one in Hululua and one in HPP. And what that is you bring like plants or added value things that you have created, and everyone trades. There's fruits and vegetables, and it's all basically, there's no money. We're just providing what we have from the aina or from our creation, and free trading it. And it's really turned into a very big happening, at least on the Kona side and the HPP side. It's also happening island-wide. I saw Oahu just start up. And then there's also, what's it called? A group of people that are women that are getting together to instill indigenous Hawaiian knowledge and to start living the way that they did, implementing the pua'a from, mountain to sea, and being able to provide for the lahui together. So
your recommendation as specific to Mauna Kea is to create space for reciprocity?
Yes.
The sharing.
Reciprocal, yeah, exactly.
I try to jump in on this particular question to kind of emphasize, especially so that it goes out, onto the YouTube and onto the record and all that. That this is the fact that these kanawai natural laws, and as they, for some of you who were around for like the ahas in 2019, right, where they would do hula, and there's one in particular where 3 out of these 4 kanawai that Auntie Pua talks about are actually in one of the hula, and that's kukula kapahu. So this is, I think that we should really take a moment to appreciate how special that this is an opportunity to actually take kukula kapahu, to take a hula and to turn that into policy. You don't get to do that every day, and what it took to get it to that point, is this, we moved the needle. We really did. And so that's something that we should really, really sit with, and because that is where we can really take, what these natural laws actually are. Because, watching this presentation several times over, it took me a while to realize, kukulu, pillars, these are not just, natural, these are pillars of stewardship. How do we actually take this and turn this into policy? What does that look like? That's the reason that we're asking you this stuff. These aren't just like fun exercises and mental exercises, because this is a data gathering where we're seeking your input to actually formulate policy. So this is a prime opportunity with that framing.
And do you have one?
Just here's a good example. Nohea brought up, for example, snow play, right? Personally, I've always had a very serious problem with, you're talking out of one side of your mouth about how sacred Poliahu is, how sacred it is. She's so sacred. Let's go load up a chunk of her body, throw them in the back of the truck, and play with it in a parking lot down the mountain. What? If we're going to really sit with the sacredness of the place, and we have to not only operate, but actually hold people through policy to a higher standard of conduct. So yeah, if it were me, yeah, no more snow play. And not only is it dangerous, it is in itself desecration to be shoveling snow. There's burials up there. If you have to like go through this whole permitting process to do that with the dirt, and you know, you can't see on the video, I'm doing this with my foot, like literally, but you can shovel snow. You can go skiing. You can go jump on it. You can take a McDonald's tray and go slide down these sacred summits. Oh, I don't know. There's some places you just should not go. And so, yeah, we should really take this place more seriously. I mean, yeah, I'm getting kind of rambly, but that is a prime example. Is going anywhere you like. No, you shouldn't.
I'm going to challenge you one more time.
Sure.
So the question is, what is an example where Kanawai exists or communities are
exists.
being able to, whether it's a policy or just a social norm, are able to manage its resources and its natural loss? Do you have one? Top of mind. 15 seconds. If not, that's fine.
Policy? Honestly, it will probably, okay, prime example, when there's an actual lava flow. Don't go out there, period, because it's hot, it's dangerous. Same thing with up there, just don't go. There are restricted areas. The most obvious example being during lava flows. DLNR, don't let people go out there, and so we can take that.
Example.
Yeah.
Yep. Mahalo, Poena. Yes.
Reteach people these things.
That's what I was just thinking, like education.
Yeah.
I wanted to offer one example of how the Kanawai Kua'a actually exists right now is that we're in the state of drought. And so the question is, the Kanawai Kua'a teaches us that we have boundaries. And so the question then becomes, what are we doing in this Kanawai Kua'a right now when the Moana and the state says reduce by 25 or 50%? So what are we doing to offset that? What are we doing to return the water cycle, continue the water cycle in the places that we come from? One example, a second example that I would give is the narrative of the canoe, the big canoes that sail on the ocean. You get to a wahi, and as an example, you're there an hour, 5 to 6 hours prior to ceremony. And so because everybody's not ready, the canoe's got to go back out and come back in when everybody's ready, right? To Nohel's point and to all the points being made tonight, it's really important that we start to recognize that Mauna Kea and Aina, Honua, are elemental forces. They are and nurturers. They are not. They're the first. They're the first in the Lavena of Papaku, right? And so I think that's a narrative to teach, is that Kanaka not come after, but there's a hierarchy. And so the narrative that we need to reclaim, and we've been reclaiming with the voyaging canoes, is the canoe is an element. When she gets there, you need to be makokau. You don't tell the sun to stop, right? And so I think it's the same thing with this. No mawara, what are we gonna do to Malama Kuleana? So that narrative, I agree, is a narrative that potentially learning centers throughout Hawaii, not just Mauna Kea, not just up at Pohakuloa or in those wahi, but every wahi can teach about Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, Hualalai, and the value sets of all of those spaces.
Mahalo nui. And I just wanted to say, in the handout, the educational handout that Mahina prepared, there are some examples too of other areas that are doing good work and in this space. We can go on to 4. Is there anything else that feels pressing to be captured here? Good? Okay. And then the last question really is around social justice. We know that, 2019 triggered a lot, and actually earlier than that, triggered a lot within our community, which led us to this point, right? And so what are the social justices that we feel are still unresolved in our community that kind of are the foundation, right, or underpin the foundation of the work that we want to do and public use of Mauna Kea? So social justice issues. And I know education is definitely can be in that space, right? Lack of limited access to education. Is there anything else that we're thinking of? Foreign investment? Yeah.
I have more, but now I just blanked out. Definitely foreign investors. Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry.
No worries. Capitalism and foreign investment.
Colonization.
Yeah.
You know, like I believe that Hawaii should be given its sovereignty and that we should be practicing that we should be living in indigenous knowledge and experience because they knew how to live within the land and within community that was productive and healthy and successful, honestly. And we're just so lost in, you know, the white man's dollar that a lot of things have fallen to the wayside. And it's, you know, it's sad because Hawaii is such a powerful place, and its people, the Kanaka people, are so truly amazing, you know, and they have understanding and knowledge from their, you know, genealogy that is so worthwhile and really can change the world. And that's just not the Hawaiian people, you know, it's all indigenous people. They just know how to live within the land and, you know, be successful with that.
Those are big ones: colonization, capitalism, sovereignty.
When there's injustices that happens, usually there's a ho'oponopono that takes place to make right what was done wrong. And so I think as we continue on in life without the things that was done wrong made correct, it doesn't give us a steady foundation to build up from. It doesn't give us the security and the I don't know how to put into words. And so I'm not sure if people are aware of what is happening in Ka'u, but we're correcting those kinds of injustices through kuleana land titles and genealogical ties. And families from Ka'u are getting back their land, and they're moving back onto these parcels that, you know, that's what we're supposed to be working on. Do we even know who holds clear title for Mauna Kea? That's something that needs to be solved. There's just so much, it's hard to put into words. But yeah, we need to make those corrections because, yeah, where is the Treaty of Annexation?
Big questions.
As there was restitution of the Hawaiian Kingdom that was taken out. So it doesn't mean we can't, but it's not there now. Would you say Kaho'olawe represents a good, did that reflect Ho'oponopono? The process of returning, of stopping the bombing and its return and some amount of contribution to its. More like 20.
No, I had brought up earlier that the special use permit process that Kaho'olawe has should be, on Mauna Kea too. So, yeah.
So I had the privilege of helping to facilitate the legislative working group. One other item that they brought up in 2021 and into 2022 is that they recommended that that the authority, if the authority was going to be stood up, that they have some kind of charge over Mauna Kea as a whole Aina system and not just that portion. That's just something that they had surfaced to have discussion about.
because nobody really has title in Hawaii. It's with the Department of Conveyances. I don't have a title for my land, and as soon as I don't pay my land tax, then I lose my paperwork at the Department of Conveyances. But nobody in Hawaii has pala pala saying I own this, unless it's from prior to contact. But that's how Hawaii works. Yeah, they don't give you a piece of paper saying this is your land, and as long as you have that paper, you pass it on to whoever, they own the land, right? It's not like that in Hawaii. Yeah, it's registered, but as soon as you don't pay your bill, you lose. It goes up for somebody else to take it from you and pay for it.
Yeah, Crown.
That's a great question.
Ceded lands, crown lands, and government lands have come up in other meetings in other communities that wanting to understand. So I think in the beginning when, go ahead.
So who has control now up there? Is it the university? Yeah. Oh, okay. And then the university has that big circle on the outside.
But when this law was passed, for the 5 years until July 1, 2028, we jointly managed. Then after that, we sold, the authority sold the UH has been the tenants.
And so that's what, January of 2028? July of 20. You know, that's a good start going forward. You know what I mean? You have eight Hawaiians on the board, or so I think it's a good, like we were talking about Ho'oponopono. I think it's a good start for us. You know, when I was growing, like I said, I was born and raised in Maui, and when I was like 5 years old, we used to go Makena Beach. You know, my dad used to take us to Makena Beach, and we used to watch the bombings at Ko'olabi because it was right there. And we didn't think nothing, you know, this in like the early 60s, like 62, 63. And then now it's like, wow. Yeah. But yeah,
Mahalo. And we're going to wrap up our small sessions now and invite the authority to the front. And you guys can ask any questions of the authority members that are here. That you have pressing. So mahalo nui for all of your feedback and your input. Kind of the process is our larger team is gonna write the comprehensive management plan, and the authority will be bringing it back to Ka'u to showcase all of the feedback that we got throughout the Pai'aina. Okay, mahalo nui. If you guys can help me just fix the chairs back to the room, we're gonna get it set for the authority members to join us at the front. Mahalo nui. Check. Okay. You want to put me back on?
check. Check, check. Okay. Aloha mai. Please, let's gather. Let's gather back here. If you must leave, we hope that you can stay. Plenty bentos. Bentos for you to take to your entire household and your neighbors. Okay? So we're going to have a little bit of a report out. Yeah. So we're going to have just a brief report out, not longer than a minute or two at the longest. And it's just really, it's not to synthesize or to summarize. It's really just to talk through some big ideas and the overall kind of highlights of their conversation. So from the group that was here, Uli Uli, we've asked Nohea Ka'ava to please share.
So our group, I think some of the highlights that came out was several of us feel strongly that the mountain should just be left alone. Everybody removed and restoration takes place. And how do you organize access? We thought of an access kind of like how they access the island of Kaho'olawe. You get a special use permit, you state your function and your purpose, and hopefully it's to assist with restoration or, instill education. Other things we talked about was the injustices. We felt like, of course, the illegal overthrow and how can anything be made right from here on if the injustices weren't, never have ho'oponopono. And I guess that's like in Ka'u in our families, that's just how it is. You ho'oponopono, then you move forward. You cannot expect to move forward and things will be smooth sailing if never have that closure, if you will. Other things we talked about. Give me some sign, you guys. I'm forgetting, my mind going blank. How you conduct yourself in sacred spaces. Like, you don't go rambling your surfboard down Pu'u, Poliahu, or Lilinoi, or, go with your kayak in Waiau. Those are just things that are offensive to who we are. We talked about Auntie Pua's presentation about Kanawai, and if we go back to listening to what these chants and meles tell us, we know how to conduct ourselves as Kanaka in certain spaces. There's boundaries. And for one, vai is very important. So if there's anything that contaminates the po'ovai of our aina, then you eliminate that which causes sickness to the health of our environment, yeah. And the important thing is that we as Kanaka Maoli o Hawaii, are no different than the aina. We are family. Our ohana is in the land, and we all share the same DNA. So we're not, this is the aina and this is us. We're one entity. And I think that was important.
One other significant idea that you brought forward was the ka'u ho'o. Can you talk about that?
So we created this program. It was a 6-month program. It was called Ka'u Ho'apili Aina. And what we did was put it out in the community for anybody who wanted to sign up. And we ran 2 cohorts and had up to like 12 haumana per cohort. And what we did was got them all of the experts we knew within Ka'u to teach about certain things of Ka'u so that, every time needed on Huaka'i and Ka'u, they're not just calling on me or somebody else. We have specialized, trained people that can awamo that kuleana and assist with teaching. Because resources seems very limited and thin these days, and we all stretched pretty thin. So the success of that program is now, when Hawaii Wildlife Fund does beach cleanups, we have active people ready to go. When we need to do lokoi'a restoration at Honuapo, we have these student groups we can rely on to go and, host for the day, and then we can actually stay home and spend time with our ohana and go to somebody's birthday and wedding.
I love that. Building local capacity, yeah, to care, participate in the careship. Okay, from your folks' group?
Mahalo. If you can share a little summary of what you heard. You can introduce yourself. Mahalo, Guy.
Aloha, Guy Enriquez. I think one of the main topics that we discussed quite a little bit deeply in was our behavior up on the mountain. Most of us in that group were very inexperienced. Like I shared, I'm 71 years old and I've been up there twice. And both times were when I was in high school. So I don't know what the situation is over there. We talked about certain behaviors, but I think that's really important. We talked about connecting with the people who are ma'a to the place and getting their guidance, because if, like I say, I'm in Ka'u and I spend my time on the ocean, I look up and I see Mauna Loa, not Mauna Kea. So my experience, my knowledge, behavior is not the best. But suggestions were brought up that you get volunteer community members, because there are a lot of tourists that go up there for stargazing, and a lot of locals that go up there to go, like I did in high school. You jump in your truck and you fill up the back with snow, and then you take your boogie board and you go as fast and far as you can, and in the same breath you make it to Kauai and go surf with the snow in the back of your car, and everybody thinks you're cool. So I don't know much about the behavior, so I think you gotta find the people who have stake in it, who do religious cultural experiences, who have more time on the Mauna, and ask them about what should the behavior be. But I think really for the locals, most of us don't know. You have to put the time in to educate us using the guidance with the local experts in that area or in the mountain. But the educational part, I think, is huge if you're even going to have a chance. Like I said, I thought it was all over. That's how little I know. And I guess we just took a break, and now we're back at it again and trying to do it a different way, which is commendable. Right? I mean, over and over, right? Over and over. Or South Point. I mean, we're not strangers to these things, but we gotta work together and find the right people who have the local knowledge of the area, who spend time on it, who've led groups before, and their voices are going to be the important ones. But once you hear it and you establish a set of guidelines of what behavior looks like, maybe signage, maybe a video like was put up, community groups willing to volunteer their time, because hey, when the snow comes, there's a whole lot more people. And even if you got a couple rangers, it ain't gonna help. You need people maybe along the way guiding and just making sure presence in presence, I think, is huge. But that was some of the stuff we talked about in the group. Did we miss anything else? I want to say this, most of it.
Okay, mahalo. Mahalo nui. We're gonna now complete our time together with Q&A. So this is the part where you get to ask maybe additional questions that you haven't been able to ask, provide comments, same grounding etiquette as when we were in our breakout sessions. So we're gonna just conduct ourselves in the same way, okay? And then we have 3 authority members here. Any questions that you want to ask of them or provide any comments to them? Yeah.
And in the most respectful way that I can ask, is this stewardship authority group here to kind of like how do I say this? Is the TMT going to be built? Is that what they're wanting to happen? And is that what's gonna happen? And we're just here to see how they can assist us in conducting the most respectful management plan, but the TMT will still be built? Or are we here and gonna stick to our guns as we've done in the beginning to say no, and let's implement this stewardship plan?
Do you want to answer that?
You start.
Well, let me see how I can answer that. TMT has a permit. Still, well, they have a permit. And they have made some public statements about their uncertainty as to whether they're going to move forward here in Hawaii. I think that's the best I can describe it. We don't know anything more than you read in the newspapers. In fact, we might get a copy of that letter an hour before it comes out in the newspaper. So I think there's still a big uncertainty about whether they're going to move forward with their project here in Hawaii or their alternative site, which is in the Canary Islands. Things change almost weekly about that, and so we are tracking it as well. And I think the last we heard was the budget bill, which just recently got signed by President Trump a couple of weeks ago, includes language that allows TMT and the Giant Magellan Telescope, the GMT, the two extra large telescopes, to move forward into their planning and design, is that the correct term? Planning and design stage. Previous to this budget bill, only the GMT was allowed to move forward into planning and design. So obviously the TMT project went to Washington, D.C. and lobbied hard. So they're both being allowed to move to their next step called planning and design without federal dollars. So there's no federal US dollars being put into the project for that next phase. That's as much as we understand where the project is. And so they are permitted, and I will say some people believe that their permit is actually imperfect. But that's something somebody else will make a decision on at the moment. And perhaps if they were to move forward with construction, then that might come up. But that is their status as far as we know. So right now we are working with the ones who are actually exist up there, that are out of the ground, and working with each of them to try and come up with some understanding of what the future is going to look like for the observatories up there, because as I found out tonight that it's still not clear with a lot of our community about what our function is, and the fact that we are a new state agency, so maybe we glossed over that at the beginning of this meeting, but we're a brand new state agency established in 2022, and we have until, or 2023 actually, we have until 2028, 5 years, to create all the important pieces that a state agency needs to have in order to conduct business, including this management plan, which we're working on right now and are seeking your input in, including administrative rules, which we are currently using the existing university administrative rules, but we will have to establish our own. And those administrative rules govern such things as access and those kinds of things, how you access the Mauna, what we do about that. Whether there's a carrying capacity, carrying capacity meaning how many people is enough people to be on the Mauna or the summit area particularly at any given time. How many tourist vans should be allowed up there? How many permits should be given? And what's the ultimate number of observatories that should be up there? We have the ability to come up with that number. But there has to be some scientific way of us determining, not just scientific, but we have to gather all the information from everybody, including talking to all of the observatories about what their future is, what they want to do, what they wish they could do in the future before we can come up with those magic numbers. And that's a hard task. And we can't do it by ourselves. We have to call on experts, but we have to call on community. Because nothing else, if nothing else, we represent community and community voice. And so that's the answer to that difficult question about TMT. TMT was the reason we were there on the Mauna in 2019 and before that in 2020. And so that's as far as I can understand where TMT's project is right at the moment. Good question, though.
I'll just add to that if they pursue what they perceive to be their rights under their existing permits, what we have told the university, is that you're probably going to see the same result. Why would it be any different? And the sentiment I've heard, now every one of our community meetings, is they still have those concerns. They haven't, moving it from one site to another may address certain concerns, but certainly not all the concerns that people had with TMT. So we don't focus really, a lot on the TMT issue for that reason, but also because I think it's really more important to focus on the Mauna. And when I think about Ho'okiki, what is flowing there that needs to flow? What is the continuum there? Not only on the terrestrial part of the summit, but in the heavens. What are we supposed to be doing or not doing to support the continuum? What is gestating in Kua'a? What's that creative thing that maybe seemed destructive but isn't destructive? It's creative. Where are the boundaries? Where's the regeneration? What should be regenerating? How do we regenerate ourselves? And part of it is not just biologically, but education. In our education, in our mindset. That's a regen. Kihoihoi. What animals should be there? What life should be there? I'd rather focus on that, and really be clear about this is the protection of the Mauna, because this is the functions, the activities that needs to take place there. Then look at TMT or anything else. Say, you helping? You hurting? Where's the reciprocity? Where's the reciprocity if you're there? So that's kind of, then TMT issue will solve itself in that, given those criteria.
Yeah, the other thing is, Mauna Kea is the source of our water for this island. And that is part of what we're talking about. I know we learn that the rain follows the forest. And so I would love to see our Mamane forest thrive up there, be replanted and thriving, so that all of Mauna Kea can be restored as much as we can in this modern time to its environmental platform. To have the snowpack. The snowpack is part of the water system that Antipua talks about. And so every time, it sounds kind of silly, like one truckload of snow going down the hill to Hilo. And, I have to admit, once or twice we brought snow down too. Oh, that was before I understood all of this. I don't allow it anymore. But, back in the days, like Gary was talking about, or Guy was talking about, that's kind of the thing to do. It is still something that I think our keiki, if they don't get on a plane and fly someplace during the winter, they'll never experience snow. I don't want to not allow our keiki to experience snow. But we have to do it in a safe way, and we have to do it in a way, like I always say, if every single visitor to Hawaii took only one pohaku from volcano, How long will it be before that landscape is altered? Not long, right? Not if we're getting over 10 million visitors a year, and maybe not quite that many to Volcano, but that's the point. We can't all take a pohaku home. Neither can we all take a truckload of snow home, right? But more importantly, it's about taking care of the Mauna. And that's what we intend to do.
Mahalo nui for this robust conversation. I think we have about time for two more comments or questions. We want to make sure that you get home at a reasonable time. Comments? Questions? Recommendations?
Where is the status of the telescopes that were supposed to be decommissioned? Can you say that one more time? What is the status of the telescopes that were supposed to be decommissioned?
So 2 telescopes have been decommissioned in recent years. Can somebody remind me of which ones they were? CSO and Hokukea, the 2 telescopes. The third one, UKIRK, has just announced their decommissioning. And then the university is considering a couple more. Whether they go through with that recommendation in the next short period of time, I'm not certain. But that all will point to what will be the eventual number of telescopes that will remain on the Mauna. Yeah.
Questions? Comments? Oh, okay.
So how many telescopes are there left up there now?
11. Is that counting? No. 11 includes the one that just announced. UKIRK? Yeah. So 11 is up there right now, but one of them's coming down, so it'll be 10.
Okay. Boy, that's a lot.
Yeah. It's still a lot.
Yeah, I was sharing earlier that, you know, in the perfect world, there would be no telescopes up there. We wouldn't be having this discussion right now. But that's just my selfishness. Until I met my friend here, he's an astronomer. I don't really know the scientific value. Is just the educational. I don't know the educational part, the scientific part of having the telescope up there, but I'm sure if, you know, there's a purpose for everything, and just, I'm glad that you guys are here. The authority is going to take over in 2028, July 1st, and so I'll have a little bit more control, I think, on the Mauna. So I appreciate you folks coming here this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
There's certain things from a regulatory standpoint, you know, when we put the strategic framework in place and all the rules, you know, then people have to comply, and that'll have some impact upon observatories. Their own finances are going to have impact on their existence too, because that's changing. You heard, you know, big cuts in NSF at the national level, and that changing. And I had it explained to me this way to me, Jean-Gabriel, that, you know, when you look at telescopes, you know, like there's first generation telescopes from like 60s, 70s, whatever, second generation, which were a little bit bigger, and what TMT represents is kind of like a third generation, which is this wanting to be bigger and bigger. When I asked the question today, I said, what's the fourth generation? And it said, it probably has to go smaller with miniaturization and so forth. The technology can catch up, because right now they're spending so much money on concrete and materials and so forth in a market, in a financial grant market for them that is struggling to sustain, or let alone grow as significantly, that the economics are kind of forcing some decisions as well. So just got to recognize it was an education for me, you know, not being from the astronomy industry, and I'm not sure, I'm probably missing a lot of pieces, Jean-Gabriel, but there's that whole side too that's going to govern how many observatories are up there. But one of the key things, you know, that we stand for, and I think if you say you do something on the Mauna, every lease I ever did at Kamehameha Schools, whatever the property was before you got it, it needs to be returned that way. And leaving stuff on the Mauna, that's your opala, is not acceptable. And we would do everything we can to kind of enforce that. And we just had this discussion at our last authority meeting about just piles of opala here. And see him, under Greg and Nahua guys, they've done a lot to kind of clean up, but we were still citing, hey, Noi I think saw some kind of over the edge a little bit. Says you got to get that stuff out. Don't leave stuff up there.
The other thing you have to understand too is that the legislature, in their wisdom, in case anybody's watching, in case you guys are watching us, put into our legislation that astronomy is a state policy. So given that, support for astronomy is a state policy. That's what it states in our law. So we don't have the freedom to just state right off the bat that everything has to come down, period, and be gone. It's more about managing it and making sure that the number that are up there, well, what I always say, if it's the best place for astronomy to take place, then we want the best science coming out of those facilities. And I think, all the astronomers that we've met in this process aim to do exactly that. So how many of them will survive the whole process based on their own fiscal constraints, as well as whatever carrying capacity is developed is still coming in the future?
But to me, astronomy is not just about observatories. If astronomy is studying the heavens, pomai, onohi. I've never heard you call yourself astronomers, but don't you do that? Don't you study the activity, the celestial activity?
I think all of us, when I think about, first of all, mahalo nui for allowing us to be here in Ka'u, pahala, and amna alehu. Really important, I think, for us to be able to drive all this way and come back into this space. This aina that is rich in the Kanaka who understand their wahi from the hunter-gatherer space, and then in the kai, lipo. So important. And so, to Uncle Neil's point, absolutely. I remember one of the testimonies that I wrote. We have the I said something to the point of, we have the capacity to be able to observe every ounce of who we are in the sky from the deck of the canoe, from the deck of the boat, right? From the surfboard, from the boogie board. We have the capacity to recognize who we are when we are immersed in our practice and our function as Kanaka. And that function is the function that informs us about and behooves us to come to community to ask what you think, what you feel, and what is important and valuable for us to know as stewards of an authority, so that we can capture it with all of this really awesome equipment that we have, so that it can become part of our comprehensive management plan. That matters so much. The thing about what we do from the deck of the canoe, and I cannot speak to what is happening up in the observatories, except that I know from our really good friend, Rich Matsuda, who's not here tonight, is that there's a lot that I don't know about what astronomy does. And I will honestly say it's because I didn't want to know. It didn't matter to me. And I can't say right now that it does or it doesn't. It just, I never liked no. I look at the observatories from my mom's house in Waimea, and I probably had every thought that I could potentially ever have and cool about it, and I never knew anything about them. I attribute the learning curve right now to Guy, I know you from volleyball from a long time ago. Aloha nui. So I attribute a lot of this learning curve to the system of volleyball that has now advanced so fast, Kara, right, and so quickly, and it's such a rate and a speed that we can't even comprehend sometimes, but that's what's happening. Okay, where am I going with this? So where I'm going with this is the authority, and we don't like that word, just say so you guys know. We're not comfortable with authority. But the oversight and the stewards that are part of this MKSOA team and family, it's clear that the difference that we hope to make and that we are working towards is keeping the community engaged and involved in this process. The 11 of us know that we're 11. Hawaii is vast and large. How we maintain this process and the continuum of this, that's gonna be where we're gonna be challenged. Because how do we keep up with that, right? I also wanna make a point that in July of 2028, a number of us are coming off of the authority. And why I say that is because we heard all of you speak tonight about how you know your home, how you know this wahi in this place. We're all gonna have to be replaced by individuals and kanaka, by kupa, who love their aina in ways that we do and even more, right? There are gonna be people who are water protectors in their homes. There are gonna be people who are fishermen, who are lavai'a, who are mahi'ai, and doing all kinds of other things. We are gonna need to replace ourselves. That is important. The last thing I would say is I think the genius of having the potential of 8 kanaka, Hawaii, kanaka maulino, on the board is intentional. And yet, I think that we cannot look at who to put there down the road. We already have to start to ask ourselves questions. How do we want to be involved as we move forward? And how do you want us to continue to engage as we move forward? That's going to be really important and really critical. Kia aloha nui.
Final question, mahalo.
I heard Auntie say that the state created policy for astronomers to be up on the mountain. And so perhaps we as a community can encourage the authority to make policy to perhaps give Mauna Kea protection it could have, like Mount Taranaki and Aotearoa. Mahalo.
This past year, there was a group that was successful in creating the TCP, Traditional Cultural Property designation for Mauna Kea. So that is another layer that we will also adhere to. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that might get to him. I just want to put one more thought about our roles. Noi Noi, our chair John Komeiji, and Rich Masuda, who have done so much, had their terms expire and they weren't put up for renewal. They're just on holdover. Successors weren't named, but they weren't named either. And word has to get to our governor and legislature. They need to be reappointed. Otherwise, we lose so much steam. Their leadership has been exemplary, and they deserve the reappointments. And our movement would be really set back if they're not. You know, and so I'm not sure any of you are politically engaged and so forth, but they should be reappointed.
Well, hopefully when our appointment comes down before the legislature ends, then, send in your testimony and support us. And then hopefully I'm not 80 years old and still serving on this thing. I'm older than Coach over here. Okay.
First of all, I thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Really appreciate it. This is a good thing I think you're starting. Like after Nohea's question that we might get it whether we like it or not. And hopefully if you get it, then we'll have the right kind of guidance. But it's kind of like windmills at South Point. You know, when they first showed up, I go, oh no, you're going to get better electricity bill. I've never seen that. Whether it's that or geothermal or anything. Another example I see all around the mainland is, all right, we need a casino. And all the money's going to, you know, benefit the people. Something's going to get the people. So my question is, or my suggestion is, if we don't have a choice and it's going to happen, make sure something comes back to our people. Something's got to come back. And not, you know, whether it's to our youth, who I think is our future. And I know you mentioned this, the 4 laws. They need to be knowledgeable of all those things. So, thank you very much.
Mahalo. Thank you for that.
Mahalo for the recommendation. I've asked Pomai Bertelman as lineal descendant representative on MKSOA to close our meeting this evening. Mahalo.
Again, I would just echo what I said a little bit earlier. Mahalo nui to all for coming tonight. Thank you for actually not knowing why you came, but you but I have to say that the conversation that I was in, and it sounds like the conversation that you guys are having on that side, was absolutely rich. And the thing is, we cannot think about all the things that you guys have shared. That's really important. What I would ask is that we not let this meeting be the last time you think about this process. We meet every second Thursday of the month. You're welcome to join us via YouTube. We start our meetings at 10 a.m. Please join us. And if you cannot, because again, we're all busy, right? We're all volunteers. We're all doing what we got to do. Invite your communities to join. Invite your haumana in your classroom to join a meeting. Because when you join a meeting, they're going to have questions. They want to know. I'm a kumu alakai at Kanokaina as well. And so I put the kids, I've had them come into 3 of our board meetings from the YouTube video in their science and social studies class. And they ask hard questions. If we don't expose them now, then how will they know? So I just am so grateful for the mana'o that all of you shared tonight. And I just want to echo the sentiment that our kiki are present and they are our future. And so as we continue to move forward in Holomua, that we are able to keep them in mind. If not Mauna, then who else are we having to fight for? Hualalai, and all the waterways and all the fisheries, right? We're all working hard in all the places. We're not all going to agree about certain things, but we're all still working hard and doing the fight that we gotta fight, fighting the fight we need to fight. So, kia aloha no. If you folks don't mind, I'd love to leave us with a pule, kako. It's a pule ola lo'ihi. It's a prayer for long life. We're gonna ku'iluna if we can. Yeah.
And also, if you have ohana in kona, friends in ohana, let them know final meeting is tomorrow for this phase of the process. Tomorrow at La'iopua, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., the homestead. And also, we have a website for all of this information that has been referenced is on kuawakea.org or .com, kuawakea.com. And a cake.
Amen.